a podcast of, so it's a podcast for authors, like book authors, fiction authors, called Writing Excuses. If you've ever heard of Brandon Sanderson, um, he's written Mistborn and The Stormlight Archive are his two like really big series. But anyway, in their podcast, I always start off like with, "All right, here we are. This is so and so, so and so, so and so. 15 minutes because you're in a hurry and we're not that smart." And then sometimes they're goofy about it. So this last one, they're like 15 minutes because you're in a hurry and we're all going to hell. And then they do their introductions and they're like, "I'm Brandon, I'm John, I'm so and so," and the last guy, "I'm sorry."
Sweet. Sorry, everyone. I clicked the wrong button and I ended the broadcast. So this is part 2 of Chapter 9. Just wrapping up from the previous thing. White space doesn't matter for most of HTML, but text areas and pre-blocks and a few other elements do care about white space in them for historical and silly reasons that should have been eradicated from HTML a long time ago, but no one wants to break old pieces of the web, so we don't ever change things. This is why we can't have nice things. And so even though we can declare that we're using a version of HTML that doesn't care about white space, browsers still do. So anyway, it's just whatever the browser sends is what Phoenix is going to have to work with. All right, Dave, did you have a bug? Or I guess, were we looking at your bug? I don't remember where we left off.
Well, I had shown I ran into the same two issues that you guys showed, and I just had done it differently, where using the errata for the book, I'll give a huge plug for read the errata, the errors basically in the book for people that aren't, Latin savvy. That's what it means. Errors in the book, and you can go. Maybe I'll send you the link, Mike, and you can put it up for where the errata are for people that don't know. And I'll show this off right now so that we can all see it in its glory. So, like right here, if I'm sharing, I hope I'm sharing.
Yeah, I can see it.
Sweet. Right here, if you're looking at the PDF of a book, at the bottom of every page, there's this thing right here, report erratum, and that's the singular of the word of the form errata. So errata is plural, erratum is singular. You click that, and now you don't even get to see it because it didn't go, because I'm just sharing my feed. But basically, it brings up the web browser with the form all filled out, and you can type in your error that you're seeing with whatever it is. I've done it quite a bit with pragmatic bookshelf books that I've had. It's really handy. But yeah, so I just grabbed something that someone else had done. Good artists create, great artists steal, whatever that saying is. And I think that was, I had done some other weird stuff before that. Like I was using, instead of using the ID from the video struct that was returned, and I was doing a similar thing, parsing it. I had done integer.parse is what I did, and that returns a tuple, so then I had to make a call to elem to get the element out of the tuple that was the integer. And I was like, this is ugly. This is so bad. This has got to be better. And that's when I was like, go to the errata, see what they've got. And they saved my day. The other thing that I ran into was maybe trying to remember. I like associate with the pages in the book that I was reading at the time. So I'm looking at those again, trying to see. Maybe not. Oh, I did have one thing that I was trying to do, and I don't know if it was just I had been dumb because I'm getting these cannot do something to the DOM errors from the YouTube. What are they called? Totally blanked on what this is. Like the
Like the
YouTube.
JavaScript API for interacting with the YouTube videos?
Yes, yeah, the JavaScript API. I was getting this DOM error thing, and I looked it up, and it's like, oh, it's because something's you're using HTTP in one thing and HTTPS in another thing, and I'm like, okay, so I'll try and figure that out. Maybe I'll edit the video and change my URL on the video to be whatever the other, uh, either add the S or take the S off. Just try it and see if that would fix it. But now I'm getting, I'll share my, well, I'll get it started and I'll share my screen. I'm getting an error, and I'm not sure if I did something stupid. Completely possible and most likely what happened. Um, yeah, I will get this up so that I can show you guys. Share my screen here. Okay. So I'm in my app. And when I go to edit the video, I get this lovely error. And I don't know, I haven't really done anything to my data. Like the slug doesn't exist for this one because I can't remember where the slug came from, but like what data is using for the slug, but it didn't have anything, so it's just 3 dash, but it pulls the 3 off and it works, so I can watch it, but if I'm trying to edit it, I get this error. So I don't know if anyone else is able to edit or if they get this error as well.
I didn't run into that one. Do you want to just try really quick on your console, run mix ecto.migrate?
Sure.
I mean, it seems weird if somehow your schema's gotten out of sync or something like that, but no, it's already up to date. Let's see, can you go back to your browser so I can see the backtrace?
Mm-hmm.
So in your action, edit, line 50. In that backtrace thing, instead of selecting app frames, can you select all frames? ASOC constraint 3, get association. And can you open in your code editor really quick your video model?
Yeah, what's the change set look like?
Oh, I think it's actually up in your schema. Videos belongs to, oh, you do have a belongs to category. Okay, so that is there. Yeah, go down to the change set really quick. Association constraint category ID. I think, let me check my code really quick. I think that's supposed to be association constraint category. Let me see. Yeah, so that should be ASOC underscore constraint category because that's the name of the association in your schema section. So I think that does it. Let's give it a try.
Let's try it out.
That's what I have as well. I have a foreign key constraint of category ID, is what I had gone in with.
Yep, there we go.
Sweet.
So yeah. And I'll just bring up I'll show you guys what I was getting before. So I'll just go back to my videos and watch, and it comes up. But I was getting all these post message failed to execute post message on DOM window. And when I looked it up, I believe it might be something as simple as, let's just edit that. Let's take off that. Maybe it'll work. Let's find out. So yeah, okay, so that's clear. Oh, I got less of them. Not some.
Yeah, I think if you check once, even if you give just a basic HTTP URL, I think it still uses HTTPS to fetch some of the data packets and things like that. So I get the same thing in my web console as well.
Oh, okay.
And as far as I can tell, it is just like those back traces. They happen pretty deep inside of. It basically enables some extra features that you can like listen to events on the iframe that got embedded, and we're not using that particular feature. We ask it what point in the video it's at whenever we're making an annotation, but I think it's trying to basically pass data from inside the iframe to outside the iframe, which you can do with like a JavaScript event, but only under certain conditions, and because we're using a non-HTTPS web server on the page, obviously we don't meet all those conditions, but it doesn't break the whole JavaScript API. It just ends up making certain features not work.
Mm-hmm.
For what it's worth, when I change mine to HTTP, my errors go away.
Oh, interesting.
And I'm using Safari. I don't know if Safari is restricting or interpreting calls differently, or if it's just not reporting all the errors, which would be weird. But
like I'm the shrug emoji guy right now because I'm really glad that this is not a book club for browser information. All right. Did anyone else have anything they wanted to show about channels? I'll show one other thing. I had this thought as we were going through, as I was going through this chapter. One of the things that they kind of highlight as a big difference between something like a channel and a request is that the channel maintains its state, and so because this gets assigned an actor, then like when we join, for instance, we look up this video, and then we assign it into the state of this channel or this connection, and it's now part of that socket. And every time we have another incoming message or an outgoing message from the socket, we can use that state without having to go back and fetch it from the database again. And this obviously just avoids a ton of database calls because you can end up exchanging, hundreds of these little WebSocket packets or whatever transport you're using, and you're not having to make new database calls for every one of them. You can keep the state. The downside of that obviously is that you're not getting fresh views of the data, or at least you would have to manually decide when you need to go back and ask the database for an update or something like that, potentially. So it's not all rainbow and sunshines. And the other thing that that I was wondering about is in the book they kind of called out like, oh, the fact that this is stateful means that you don't have to do all these extra database calls. It also means that your code for every one of those types of interactions doesn't have to duplicate the effort of making that call. It doesn't have to recreate the whole state of the connection every time. And that makes sense to me, but also I was thinking about some other potential uses of channels, and my +1 project from this week is I'm working on a little game. So I'm making a Phoenix app that hosts, did either of you guys ever play any of those MUD games, like those text-based dungeon games?
I did the Homestar Runner one.
You played the game that makes fun of those kinds of games? So I played one of those games a bit during college. This is like when I was first getting into Linux and learning about the console. And there's these games that you basically just connect to a server, and it's just sending you. It's almost like you're chatting with a game. And so it'll like you join, and it says you woke up in a strange building. You can move northwest, east, or south. There's a candle in the corner, and then you chat back like north, and it moves you, and then it tells you where you are now, and it says there's a rusty dagger is on the ground. Do you want to pick it up? And so like you end up just text messaging back and forth almost with this game server and going through this adventure. And I had this idea of like, oh, that'd be really cool to make one of those. And instead of having to write some crazy threaded TCP server, which is basically how they did it back in the day, like this would be really cool to model with something like channels. But instead of raw text, I'm going to send JSON packets around, and that way you can write a program that plays the game. And so that's what I'm trying to build with my +1 project. But one thing that came up for me is I was like, what do I do if someone disconnects from the game and then reconnects? And I was like, that means that like in order for this game to work, I'm going to have to persist the state of the game into a database. And so like it made me ask the question of like, I totally buy into the performance implications of using something like WebSockets or channels or whatever to make applications, because I do get to maintain the state. I don't have to do a lot less data to make the interface stateless by like doing session cookies and all this stuff, because I just have a persistent connection, and I can use that to keep things authenticated and not re-authenticate every request and all these other things. So I buy into that part of it, but the part of it that I'm wondering about is like if I'm going to have to support disconnect and reconnects as a part of something that I want to support, then I do need to have a way to recreate the whole state of that channel whenever someone reconnects, which means I am going to have to persist some sort of information, exchange a token on the client and the server, or something like that, so that when that client reconnects, I can get them back up to that current state and then just can keep the conversation going. So something that I like, it's awesome that Phoenix gets us way closer to like my ideal scenario there, I guess. But it seemed like maybe claiming that this would keep your application code much simpler. I don't know, maybe it does still keep it much simpler, but at least there's some edge cases there still to be aware of. And for me, all the use cases I'm thinking of using this, I'm like, oh man, disconnects and reconnects are the time that I can imagine this really kind of coming back to bite me. Any other comments on channels or Phoenix from this week? I should have done. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, if I had something to comment on, it would be that the errors were just a little less helpful from channel stuff than they have been previously in the app. But still, it's better than some of the JavaScript errors that I'd get where I'm like, I don't know what this is saying. This is just, and then it also depends on the browser too, right? So, well, this browser, it's like just error. Like, that's it. Okay, I just give up. But yeah, but still, the information that, even though it was like a dump of information that you'd see on the screen, like we saw earlier in the call, just that dump of information, it still had useful things. You just had to figure it out. So, and maybe that's something that they're working on. I don't know if Chris has looked into making those errors a little more friendly. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the ones that threw me for a loop were the ones where it's kind of like an Erlang error and not an Elixir level error. So like the string concatenation one, those ones were the ones that were the hardest to parse. And I don't know if, I mean, I guess they could make that string concatenation operator, they could map that into an Elixir function call instead of an Erlang function call, and that way they could watch for the common error cases and raise specific errors for them. But yeah, I don't know. It's a little bit wonky. I definitely had that same sensation that they had set the bar so high with their error messages in the first 8 chapters that this is the first time that I was like, oh, you're not just going to immediately tell me how to fix my problem? What is this language?
Did you think through situations or ideas how you might get around that disconnect, reconnect with your JSON packet returns, or saving a state, or somehow serializing whatever you need to bring the user back on?
Yeah, so I haven't totally decided if this is the right way for me to fix it. The tools that I think of immediately from having a whole long background in making traditional web-based applications is like, oh, what I could make it so that the JavaScript client creates a token for itself at the time that it first connects, and normally what I like, the naive approach that I was thinking of is just like, oh, okay, you can just send me your name and I'll use that as your identifier, and then just set up your state as a fresh new player in the game. And instead what I'm going to do is make my join function, when a join goes through successfully, I'll actually take that client name or token or whatever I'm going to use for an identifier, and I'll actually persist that somewhere. I haven't decided if I want to persist it all the way to a database, or maybe just have, I don't know, some other actors that are supervised in my system that are just about maintaining kind of some stateful information. But anyway, something that lives outside of the channel itself, and I would have that persisted so that then when someone joins, I can really quick say, hey, is this token that already had some state? If so, grab that state and pull it back in and put it back into the channel so that I can keep going from where they left off. And if they didn't have any previous state, then set them up a new state and go persist that is their current state. And I'm guessing that, like, my intuition is that there's probably some sorry, let me step back 2 more steps. Channels, the whole like handle in function, the join function, the way you return these tuples of like OK and a response and the next state, that's all like, those are all just layered on top of a set of libraries that come with Erlang called OTP. And specifically, there's one called GenServer. And GenServer is meant to be a generic server implementation, so it accepts messages and maintains state, and each previous state is what gets passed in as the current state to the next message call. And so I can see that they're building on top of that. And the thing that I'm trying to figure out is, I'm pretty sure there's good OTP libraries for saying, hey, I want to have a gen server where the state doesn't just live inside of the recursive function calls. It also gets persisted somewhere else in another supervised actor, so that on a crash, when I restart, I can regain that state again. I know that there's people who have done this lots of times in Erlang and in Elixir, so I'm sure there's good libraries for it, but I don't know what they are. I'm not familiar enough with the community, so I'm just going to hack together something that is a sort of solution where I just store it in a totally separate supervision tree. And if that supervision tree crashes, then everyone has to just restart the game, I guess. Deal with it. It's free software. But anyway, that's my best idea I've come up with so far.
So in terms of a crash, there's no handle out, or there's no, like, the data, the state that you are constantly changing between that socket connection, that's just totally lost. And right, if I'm understanding right, just on a crash or a disconnect, that's totally lost, which is different from a refresh. Or would a refresh be also considered on that?
Yeah, like if the person connected to the channel is from a browser and they do a refresh will force all WebSockets to close and then restart the page, which will end up running the JavaScript that opens the channel again. And in that case, a full disconnect and reconnect, you do lose all the state and you just rejoin the channel. And it's not going to remember anything about your state. And actually in the chapter, there's that little section about why don't we just use our cookie session to authenticate WebSocket sessions, and there's other security implications with using cookies related to WebSockets, and so no one does it. Everyone does like token-based authentication, which is frankly better anyway, whenever you can swing it. And so, so yeah, but if you do have a full restart, or if there's a problem in your code, like all those problems that we saw in our consoles where it says, oh, we had this gen server crash. You can see the word gen server in that backtrace or that blob of information. And it's because that was an asynchronous process that just happened to be running in the same virtual machine, and it crashed because there was a code error that wasn't handled. And the behavior when that happens is just completely let it crash. Don't try to automatically restart it or anything like that, because we don't know if that error is going to be a persistent error that just happens over and over, or if it was just like because there happened to be one bad input. And so because Erlang doesn't know the difference, it will just crash unless you have set up some sort of handling on your own. And so again, I'm imagining that this is either has plans in Phoenix to support something around this, or maybe they're going to leverage another set of OTP libraries that has some of this stuff built into it. And so I don't know, maybe I'll go hassle Chris on Twitter. Last time he was super responsive when we hassled him, so that's probably bad behavior for him to have because it just entices me to hassle him more. But
yeah, I'd be interested to see if that's been discussed or had any ideas or thoughts around it. If he's kind of gotten through this book and the beta and working through Phoenix.
Yeah, and the only reason that I mean, I would guess that they'll end up having some sort of library support for it, but I would doubt that it would be the default, because for things like a chat application where rejoining the chat just means start getting the new messages again, and you don't necessarily care always about catching up with a backlog or something like that, in those cases, doing the work of copying your state and putting it outside of your actor, that costs time and memory on the server every single time. And because channels are definitely designed for high performance usages, I'm imagining that that's not going to be the default behavior. They'll probably stick with the default of have the state only live inside that one actor that is maintaining the state of the channel, because that's what allows you to scale to having 2 million of those things running on the same piece of hardware with like no sweat. So I doubt that they would make it the default, but I would bet that they'll probably end up making some sort of library support for it, or at least like here's a recommended path for adding that kind of support. All right, I should have started with that rant instead of ended, because the reality is channels are pretty amazing. Like I will be able to build applications now that do things that I could never do before. One specific place that I'm going to try to implement them in the near future, I'm hoping, is at work. We have a Fay server. If any of you are familiar with Fay, it's similar. It's like a WebSocket protocol. You can sort of run it inside of a web and sort of inside of a Rails process, but it runs using Event Machine. And if you've ever run that in production, you know it's terrible. And on a 4-core VM, we can get like 1,000 clients connected simultaneously. And on a 4-core VM, Elixir, like Phoenix channels, can have 450,000 clients connected at the same time. So kind of a disparity in performance there. So channels are totally amazing, and the way that they're leveraging the Erlang VM is brilliant. So I really don't want to end on a downer rant just because I'm like, oh, I don't know exactly how to handle disconnects and reconnects, and it's confusing me. But maybe I'll just go try to contribute to the guides and add some more information around that in case other people run into the same issue. All right, do we want to just go around the horn then? And the call's gone kind of long. I'm surprised with only 3 of us on here. It's been a good conversation. But maybe we skip +1 projects and just talk about like final picks, if anyone has a final pick from this week.
I've got a pick that I'll share. It is right here. I started reading, didn't get a chance to finish, but Chris works at Dockyard now. I don't know for how long he's been working there, but he wrote this, Phoenix is not Rails, and I read quite a bit of it and really enjoyed it. So this is something I want to finish reading first off. I'll send you the link, Mike, so you can put it with the video.
Yeah.
But it was kind of refreshing. It's like, oh well, we wanted some of the same conventions. We wanted it to be like MVC, even though it's not object oriented. It's functional. Like, but you get this. I don't know. Maybe this isn't the right word, but the illusion. You get this great illusion or this great abstraction around pushing things through a functional pipeline that follows kind of that Rails convention of model, view, and controller to do those things. So that was good. These are similarities, but then there's like huge differences. Like we don't do this, we don't do that. Like we don't want to have this huge footprint to run our applications. And basically, a Phoenix app is an Elixir app. Like that was one of the things that I picked up first on was he's like hitting on. This is there's a difference between a Ruby programmer and a Rails programmer, and in Phoenix, they want it to be you're an Elixir programmer. You just happen to be using Phoenix. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I saw that article and I thought it was pretty good. Definitely worth a read. I'll share a couple of things. First, I'll share this chat from Garrett, who said, I ditched book club for sushi. I'm confessing my sins. I probably shouldn't share that, but I'm going to do it anyway. All right, so my first other pick besides that is Let's Encrypt, which I'm super excited about. So this is, it's like not Elixir or Erlang specific at all, but the Linux Foundation and Mozilla and a few other people got together and they're making a free certificate authority. So I can make my personal projects use HTTPS without having to go through all the brain damage of talking to a real certificate authority that charges money and paying money just so that people can talk HTTPS to my blog. So I'm super stoked about this. I think it's going to be really awesome to be able to get certificates for like open source projects and free projects and things like that. So generally makes me happy about the internet. And then let's see. I know I had another pick. Oh, my other pick is this. So I was talking about how I'm trying to use Phoenix at work. One of the first things I need to do is I need to get really solid support for protobuf because we use that very heavily at work. And there's this EX protobuf, which is supported by Bitwalker on GitHub. His real name is Paul Schoen something. Sorry, Paul. But so I've been working with this, and I needed to add just a few features in order to make it work. And I have just been totally blown away, and I am already pretty used to having really good experiences with things like pull requests from being involved in the Ruby community, where being nice is like part of what it means to be a Ruby and Rails programmer. But this experience has just been awesome. Like I opened up this issue to be like, I want to support this thing, but in order to do it, I'm breaking some of the existing functionality. I realize this is sort of weird, but I hope that it's useful enough that I think we still might want to do this for the project. And I just got like a ton of feedback, and this is not even showing like all the outdated diffs, and it just was a ton of communication back and forth, and let's try this, let's try that. We ended up closing this one and opening up a future one, I think 35, or no, 34. Oh, it must not be that one. How was that mine? Anyway, it's just been a ton of back and forth, and the maintainer and also just another person who's been using the library have both just had a ton of feedback and really positive feedback. And what we've ended up with is some pull requests that are way better than what I had initially submitted. and I've learned a ton about Elixir macros and Erlang level stuff through the whole project. And also as a part of this, I did have to also open some PRs with an Erlang project called GPB, which is doing the protobuf parsing for us, and had a very similar experience there. The maintainer of that project was like, "Oh, I'm super glad that you're submitting this. We need to get these things cleaned up," but was just very positive overall. I just can't say enough good things. So, Paul, thanks very much for being an awesome maintainer. And if anyone watching this is like just dipping their toes into Elixir and not really sure if they're ready to dive in, all I can say is just find an open source project. It's so new. There's so many things in the community that still need to be built for the first time. And every maintainer out there would love to have some extra help. And I've been having just totally phenomenal experiences from an open source perspective of diving into Elixir. So just highly suggest that everyone do that. Find something that you can contribute to in the Elixir space. Did you have any picks for this week, John?
I'll be honest, I'm blanking on what we define picks as. I'm assuming it's just like any cool thing we found this week.
Yeah, one cool thing from the week.
Honestly, a lot of my time has been dealing with Windows and dealing with Windows functioning like a Linux server. And so one of the things, I found some nice libraries to run, specifically get Bash on it. That was very exciting, but not only that, I found ways that I can script it and set it up very easily within a few minutes. And just a simple click and get it going and get it up on any Windows machine. And really, that's been the most exciting thing for me all week. There's my pick.
So wait, your pick is literally going to be Windows?
No, it's yeah, sure. It's literally helping my stress levels with Windows recently.
So Bash on Windows.
Bash on Windows.
All right, I can live with that pick. I don't know if I could end this call in good conscience with the pick just being Windows in a whole, but scripting and programming on Windows, I can get on board with that.
Yeah, let's say that. Let's say that I've avoided having to live with Windows. Oh, actually, not only that, but I also got a daemon running as a service on Windows using Ruby, which was also very super exciting. So then we could have these states and processes running that are not dependent upon a user. And there you go. That was also super exciting this week.
Nice. That's actually better. I know the thing that you're working on, and I worked on the version of it to make it this. It's building mobile apps for us. It does like white labeling and then the actual compilation of a bunch of code into a final mobile app file that can be submitted to like an app store or whatever. And I did the version that runs on an OS X machine, and in order to get my background process to run, I do actually have to fake a user login because otherwise I'm not allowed to start up a daemon that's like registered at the system level. It has to be registered to a user. So I'm glad that you were able to get around that problem because I couldn't do it in OS X. And Dave, I apologize for the jabs at Windows.
No, it's totally fine. I don't get to use nice things. This is why I can't use nice things, because I'm in Windows land. So the Elixir is the first nice thing that I've had. This is just, I can't say it enough. Elixir, it's a nice thing that I can use in Windows land. It makes me happy.
I really want to. I'm really curious. I'm going to try to make. Because Elixir does come with some native like UI kit stuff, so you can actually like write a windowed application. I really want to try to write something and send it to you and see if it actually like works cross-platform. Because other than like Java and JRuby, I've basically never gotten that to work across two machines without a whole lot of effort. So I'd be curious to see if even that part is pretty portable.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. Hopefully, it would be if you're using. If it's like something that's built in with Erlang or Elixir, hopefully that it would. But if it's like the experience that I had at the URUG meeting a couple months ago, where it was, hey, run this code, and it was like, oh, ouch, I just want to give up. And then JRuby saved the day. But yeah, if it's like that, then it's like, well, I used to have nice things, and then Elixir broke my heart.
So, actually, I've got one more thing. I remembered. This will be the best thing we have. So, the new Star Wars movie is coming out. I'm sharing my screen. Let's go to a new tab. If you go to google.com/Star Wars, you can use your Google account to choose. Hold on, it's coming. Whoop. Where's it at? There it is. Which side you want. And then if you pick a side, then it adjusts your whole Google account with it. Like you get this cool icon for maps, you get these cool backgrounds that are shifting. Any part of the Google service or platform you're using is adjusted to the sweet, awesome, light or dark side of the Star Wars. So if you use Google services enough, that's a good thing for you to do.
I'm going to have a slight anti-pick on that, which is they only support not only Gmail accounts, but it has to end in gmail.com. So I own riesd.com, and it's actually like my email that was hosted by Google and everything, but I can't use that, and I'm super mad.
Oh, yeah. Here's a sad trombone.
All right. Well, I think it's been a really good call, guys. Thanks for keeping the momentum of the Phoenix Book Club moving. I'm really sorry I had to cancel last night, but I'm glad we were able to make it work tonight. And do you guys think we want to try and do next Wednesday and bust out Chapter 10, or do you think we're going to need 2 weeks?
Oh, I haven't even looked, so I don't even know. Maybe we could talk about it on Slack as we're reading it. I know I'm going to start reading the next couple days, but
okay. So just so we know, the dates. So next Wednesday is the 9th, and the following one is the 16th, which is the opening night of Star Wars. So I think 2 weeks from now might actually be difficult to make work.
Is this the 16th? I thought it was the 18th.
Yeah, the 18th.
Why do I have? Oh, I have a calendar item that's just off by a couple days.
It could be the start
and
of
actually, that's
July.
Wednesday, 16th. So Tuesday is the 15th. So yeah, let's talk on Slack. We can figure it out as we get closer. But in any case, we only have 2 chapters left in the book. Phoenix Book Club, it will have actually finished the whole book, which will be a major accomplishment for me because I always get bored halfway through books and stop reading them. So thank you to both of you very much. All right, and I guess that'll do it for us. We'll sign off for tonight and say hi to all you guys in a couple of weeks when we get back on. See you guys.
All right, thanks.
Bye.